But luckily enough, I prepared 20-something slides to make sure that we have enough content to delay things for that. So, let's see how this works. Which laptop is this? So this is leveling up security, rootless containers, hidden signatures, and process improvements. There'll be more time on some of these than others. So just briefly, covered it last year, so I won't really cover it again, but just to have it on the slides to refer to later on. This is the terminology for the security stuff we use, the CVEs, CNAs, CWEs, CVSSS, and so forth. And that the general idea is that we have Collabora Online security process and we have a LibreOffice security process, and that they are managed a little bit differently because we host Collabora Online on GitHub and we just use their process, the GitHub provided security process, and then the LibreOffice process preceded all that and is not hosted on GitHub. So LibreOffice is itself able to issue CVs directly, and it is a CV numbering authority, whereas Collabora Online then does it through GitHub. So that when we issue specific Collabora Online security things, we do it on the GitHub pages, and we do LibreOffice ones, we do it on the LibreOffice pages, and the numbers come from different places. But the actual people involved in both processes are the same people, and we have a common reporting location. So anything to do with either Collabora Online or LibreOffice or related things, anything derived from the original Star Office, they all go to the one mailing list, and it's the same people that deal with all of them. The general policy is that we release the information about something that we fixed 30 days up, sometime before 30 days after the issue itself has been fixed. People are generally credited, and that's generally the only thing that they get from us, from LibreOffice or Collabora Online, is just the crediting for having discovered something. So there isn't a general policy of paying people or paying for information like that. That common process is deciding between the various affected groups what the date will be, and is it actually in Collabora Online? Is it actually in that common core? Is it in another module, let's say like a third-party graphical filter, libtiff or something like that, and find out where does it belong? Either coordinate amongst ourselves what to do with it, or find somebody else to deal with it and reach out to affected projects and get it all done. So that's the security process itself. The improvements over the last year to some of the numbers that we have are the usual one where we do the Coverity numbers, and this is our Coverity graph over the last couple of years. Each time you see a big spike, it tends to be because a new version of Coverity was released and it finds a whole new thing, so the spike goes up, you deal with the new set of newly detected type of things, and then you get back down to your target of about 0. You never quite get to 0, but you tend to bump along near it for core. So that's the LibreOffice one itself, defect density over time, and then this is the Collabora Online specific one, which is following a similar pattern of stable spike for a new release and then decrease back down again. There's less lines of code in Collabora Online, so numbers like this are far more volatile, in that, like, getting 2 additional findings in Collabora Online gives you a much bigger spike than 2 additional findings in the core. Doesn't move the needle whatsoever. So that's just the last 12 months plus of changes in those numbers. We do a lot of file format fuzzing as well, especially in core side of things. There's fuzzers on the online side of things as well for the protocol. I think Miklos basically looks after that. On the core side, we're looking at about 53 file formats conversions, mostly import. We have additional export ones now as well. So if you export to PDF, we have a fuzzer for that output part of that cycle, and the same then for conversion to some of the Microsoft formats from our own format. So we're exploring not just importing documents, but also exploring what happens when we convert back outwards again. Are we finding crashes there and issues like that? So those are going quite well. There was a mention recently of the font embedding. So there's the most recent fuzzer is fuzzing that font code. So that's kind of your general security stuff. So the new security features, one of the little sublines on the heading here was the hidden signatures, and the hidden signatures is briefly explainable as the same kind of feature that exists in web servers, where you can just configure them not to announce what are the details of the web server, so that it's not trivial to just say, oh, this is web server version Y, we know there's a security flaw with that one, and we can just use that to attack. So if you have that kind of level of paranoia, the same feature is now available in CoolWSD that you can toggle on, not exposing your server signature, and it will do, like in the example here on the right hand side, it just doesn't return anything back for what type of software is serving out in this port. And other web servers follow a similar thing. The more significant thing is the whole rootless container thing. And the way it works for online is that each individual document you open up opens up in a different instance of basically LibreOffice, a different kit, and each one of them is isolated from the other one, and that they don't, from their perspective, they don't share the same file system, and that they all have their own subset of the file system that they're then limited to by chroot, which is great, and it gives you that kind of isolation between documents, so that a document, if compromised, can't expose any information from another document to the attacker, which is great. But to do that, you have to have certain privileges, and we traditionally do this by just having, you know, the set capabilities on these binaries, so that the binaries are known to require these extra powers, and then we drop them once we use them. But it is a concern that you have these binaries that are more privileged than in an ordinary one. It's not something you really want to do. You have to trust that the developers have written them correctly, and that they are dropping the privileges like we say we do. And it's really a common policy on all of these containerized environments that they would actually just have a simple policy saying that you can't have, everything has to be rootless, you can't have any of these special privileges required. So we want to run online in those Dockery, Podman, etc., container kind of environments without any difficulties, or as little difficulties as possible. And what those containers themselves use, they use Linux namespaces to implement containers. So the kind of namespaces that matter to us are just this mount namespace, and what it allows you to do is, without any particular privileges, it allows you to do things that you would normally need privilege to do. And in this particular case, it allows you to use this chroot that we can use to put our kits into their jail file systems. And then with the namespaces, you can do the kind of things that you could only normally do as administrator, but you're only limited to the resources that the original user would be able to use. So you can do things you would not, you can chroot, but you can only chroot into file systems you own. You can mount things, but you can only mount things that you can own. You can't change things the way the root has initially done. So if root has mounted something with a particular flag, you can't remount it to remove that flag. You can add additional lockdown if you want, but you can't take away anything that the higher level privileged user has applied. And it's also a one-way process. Once you enter into one of these namespaces, you're in the namespace. You can't do something as a kind of a fake root within your own world and then come back out again and retain those kind of root privileges in the upper level. So there's a little complexities to it all. It does then mean that you don't have to have capabilities on the binaries, which means that you can use namespaces as an unprivileged user, and you don't have to have any of these extra things, which is fine. Some of the other things that we use are these seccom things that say that once you have, we limited the amount of syscalls that can be used by our child processes. So these are the kind of things that containers do, and that means that the Collabora Online itself is using container-like technology. So you've got the same kind of container-like technology in Collabora Online as the kind of environment that you want Collabora Online to run inside of. So you've got containers inside of containers. Nothing is ever easy with any of these things. The problem isn't so much with the containers or the Linux namespaces, it's with all the additional layers that have been put around it by all of the other distributions or by the containery Dockering environments that you live in. So if you're looking at a bare operating system, namespaces work perfectly fine under any of the RHEL-based ones. But then if you're looking at some of the Ubuntu-based ones, they have put additional AppArmor restrictions on things. At the level of installing the packages and expecting this to work on Ubuntu, it works fine because we can ship a profile that says, yes, we know we're using namespaces and it comes in the packages. But then if you're running Collabora Online inside Docker, or one of the Docker-based ones like LXC, which then says you can't use certain syscalls, then your profile from your package level doesn't help you deal with that. You now need another profile at that container level that says, yes, I do want Collabora Online to be able to use namespaces inside the container, and we have some documentation that exists now for how you can do that. But out of the box, you'll get a good experience on Podman, on any of the RHEL-like ones, and there is no complexities. You'll get a good experience out of the box on any of the operating system level, and then depending on what you're doing, putting Collabora Online inside a container may require whitelisting, the ability for it to use namespaces within namespaces so that you get the best experience. It's not just that you get a kind of a more simpler security issue, there's also a performance improvement by being able to do your mounts via namespaces instead of helper applications. So that's where your layout is. Yes, so basically it all works. It may need a bit of customization when you actually are deploying on the inside containers, but it can be done, and there's documentation available on the SDK on Collabora Online. Okay, thank you.